That's a great question. A lot of this started for us because my wife and I had mentors in undergrad and in grad school who just shared life. They were the kind of professors who their teaching was great, but what was really transformative was the question they asked about what was going on with our family back home, or the conversations we had after their kids finally went down to sleep at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., which now that we have 2 young kids, I realize, wow, that was a sacrifice.
Totally.
But the sort of the real deep formative stuff often is not in the formal classroom. And so we were interested in what it would look like to set up something that is, academically rigorous, does involve a lot of thinking, a lot of reading together, but allows that to be integrated with the rest of life. And in terms of the spiritual disciplines, we're we're actually a ministry of Christ Church Waco, which is an Anglican church in the ACNA here in Waco. And so, but most of our fellows aren't actually Anglican. They come from all sorts of denominations and backgrounds. But for us, we said, what would it look like to sort of take a classic Christian practice like praying morning and evening prayer, which is one of the gifts, I think, of the Anglican tradition to all Christians.
You use the Book of Common Prayer, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the Book of Common Prayer. Yeah, and so it's just so much scripture, right? And we're steeped in the lectionary readings walk us through the story of scripture, and so what would it look like to just take on this discipline for 9 months? Maybe it's not something that you'll do exactly that way for life, but to do it in a community, you're going to be doing it the days you don't feel like doing it, and the days you do, the days where you're struggling to pay attention, and the days where it's really hitting you hard, and it's all part of the process, So in terms of the disciplines, that was obvious. And then Sabbaths was really important to us, to emphasize too, a practice of rest. I think this is one of the areas where, unfortunately, the church just tends to mirror culture, and we find ways of using Christian categories or spiritual language to justify essentially being workaholics, and people who are defined by our productivity. And, if it's productivity for the sake of the gospel or something, we feel, I think, better about it. But there's something, I think, that's really fundamental to remembering that God is God, that we are creatures, that the gospel is not about our productivity, that you can talk about and think about, but unless you actually, rest and discipline yourself to rest, there's a contradiction, I think. And so Sabbath practice and prayer, and then a few other things. They do some spiritual direction, and some other things that sort of seek to sort of grow this double knowledge.
If you enjoyed this conversation from the Transforming Discipleship podcast, listen to the full episode at SmallGroups.com/podcast.